So I know there's been a lot of deaths with the COVID-19 vaccine, but that's mainly in older people or those that have underlying diseases. It's not like those deaths are not like the study you showed. It's just like as a whole, we're not seeing our college age range. Also, there's no size-fits-all solution to this. It has been proven that there are some people with no reaction to the vaccine, many with mild or short-term reactions, as well as some with life-threatening side effects and some that may be unknown to us at this time. What is good for one person is not always good for another. And the blanket vaccine does not properly address the needs of these individuals. Also, my opponent mentioned how he said there's no equal alternative, but there also is natural immunity, and I mean, according to the CDC, you can't get the vaccine if you have had COVID. You would have to wait a certain amount of time. Natural immunity has shown to also be very effective. Also, he mentioned how he said that the vaccines are not 100% effective.
Time.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, time for that grand crossfire.
Yeah.
Everybody's involved.
Can we use Prepton?
You can, yes. One minute used, 1 minute left.
You definitely should. Yes.
30 seconds.
I chose I ignored this.
All right, that is all the preparation. We are ready to proceed with our grand crossfire for 3 minutes.
I thought Crossfire was.
No, it's because it's.
Okay, yeah,
What?
yeah, my bad.
That is in the wrong.
Do you
Do you want to stand up? Might as well.
Okay.
Leonor, am I right or wrong?
For which? Yeah, grand contract.
Okay, sorry.
That's right.
Okay. So you said you compared not getting the vaccine to drunk driving. Would you say that people that cannot get the vaccine because of other reasons such as allergies or some other adverse health risks to them cannot, like, if they aren't getting the vaccine, does that make them a reckless person?
No, that's not their choice. I said if you choose to not get the vaccine, it's not their choice. They obviously can't get the vaccine.
But those who are not getting the vaccine, like, they still have their personal choice, and it is not like recklessly endangering people. People are still making the choices to be around them. People are still making the choices to go into these public spaces with them.
Yes,
And-
but they're an exemption because they obviously can't get the vaccine because they're a third year.
No, but I'm also talking about the people, you know, that is one scenario, and just because like, and those people cannot get it, and also people who are not able to get it, are also not bad people because of that. And the drunk driving thing, is not comparable in any way. Drunk driving is illegal for a reason, and it is recklessly endangering people by operating the vehicle inundated with alcohol. And then my next question for you is about, the measles thing. Does the fact that measles took years after the vaccine was introduced to ever go away, does that not sort of prove the point that vaccines aren't necessarily the most effective way? There's a lot of other
Yes,
measures
but
that are put in
had the
place.
vaccine never been put in place, who knows when it would have been minimized?
But who's to say that that vaccine actually did minimize it? I mean, it did,
CDC and
But-
UHS data.
or sorry, I meant the mandates actually did do it. The vaccine, I'm sure did, but, it's not pretty much mandates.
Just by sheer logos that, if you have more people getting vaccinated, that starts to slow the spread. Just by sheer logical reasoning, you can
Yeah,
put
but
that
how is
together.
stopping the spread if the government itself can't even produce enough vaccine? Because they had stated that they were going to produce hundreds of billions of vaccine, and they only ended up producing tens of billions. So regarding that huge gap, even if you were to decide to get the vaccine or not, there still wouldn't be enough available to everybody to use. So shouldn't the government be held responsible for that, other than the people being considered selfish and reckless?
Is the government Pfizer?
I'm sorry?
Is the government Pfizer? Do they control manufacturing on the vaccine?
No, they do not control manufacturing on the vaccine, but they
So
do.
who are
What
they
they
to
do
say?
control
The government
is,
does give support to the vaccine, and they are the ones that like. support
and
the
they're also
vaccine. And
the
especially
one
now
who,
that it is approved.
yeah, and they're also the one who are going to like implement maybe like the vaccine like different. So maybe they don't produce the vaccine, but they definitely have a lot to do with how the vaccine is going to be distributed.
Yeah,
You also
they-
gave a lot of numbers about, since the vaccine is now approved, that it will be produced in mass quantities, but there's still other difficulties such as like refrigeration and like short shelf life of vaccines. And do you have any statistics to prove that it will now be mass manufactured, or is that just you speaking?
So, for one, the CDC and the NIHS have both stated that now that the vaccine is completely out of their test phases,
Time.
All right, Great Grand Crossfire. And to our final focus speakers of the evening.
Hi, my name is Maribel Escobar, and I am the affirmative team consortium. As we all know, COVID began in 2019, just 2 years ago, and is still an ongoing issue as it leads to our third-year mark, with thousands of deaths across the world only increasing more as the days go by. Today, the opposing team argued that using stress of establishing a vaccine mandate would be a violation, although I would like to go over bodily autonomy once again. Bodily autonomy is the need to make one's own life decisions, but it doesn't necessarily mean to put someone's life at risk and potentially take their life away. It is a selfish act to refuse to allow a vaccine and provide for the common good of our country that can save lives. They argue that the harm of allowing a vaccine mandate would be that it violates the freedom of choice and being ruled by the government. Although refusing the mandate violates the needs of the governments to protect our scholars and future generation that is yet to come. It is the government's own interest to want to prevent death. This is why it is important to recognize the true nature of bodily autonomy, because what a person considers harmful can be life-saving for so many. Countless studies, in fact, have shown that the vaccine is safe. According to Kaiser Foundation Health, as discussed previously, clinical trials showed both the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are more than 94% effective in protecting against COVID-19. And according to the World Health Organization, the use of masks alone is not sufficient to provide an adequate level of protection against COVID-19. Therefore, vaccines are the most effective solution for society to come out of this pandemic. Two health organizations prove that this vaccine is safe enough. Now, requiring a vaccine mandate isn't something new. We have seen commonly deadly diseases such as polio, measles, and many more that were all prevented by taking a vaccine. And as we all know, we are all standing here doing perfectly fine. We discussed Jacobson v. Massachusetts, and it was a great example that we brought along. According to the Harvard Law Review, the court drew an analogy to the permissibility of such mandates in K-12 public school systems requirements which courts have upheld for decades, referencing the Supreme Court's jurisprudence in Jacobson v. Massachusetts and such v. King. Because of the greater public health risk, public universities are even on sure footing with the COVID-19 vaccination requirement and an influenza vaccination requirement. As we discussed, Jacobson v. Massachusetts is known for giving states the power to require a vaccine mandate, meaning this can apply to colleges and universities. This also goes way more broader than just our college students. It is also about the safety of their siblings, parents, friends, and many more. So many college students tend to go back home, and we want to allow to not be able to harm their families. The more we restrict ourselves to establish a vaccine mandate, the higher risk of never being able to end this pandemic and go back to a pre-pandemic life. As stated in the beginning, all it takes is at least 70% of the population to be immune to keep the rate of infection down, as stated by the Bloomberg School of Public Health. And discussing masks, masks are not effective. K95s are effective, and the masks that we are currently all wearing right now are not effective. So by allowing the vaccines in college, it will allow for college students to have a full college experience without having to hold back and having to self-quarantine for 14 days. It will allow for students to engage better in a safe environment and learn much better in class. And this is why it is a must to require a vaccine mandate, as it will put a stop to this pandemic, save lives, and allow for college students to have a better life. Now you tell me, would you like to be the drunk driver that causes harm to those around you, or would you like to partake in the common good and save lives? Thank you.
Use your time.
I'm going to use 1 minute remaining. That is the preparation time. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our final focus speech.
Hello everyone, my name is Samantha Tingley, and I will be the negative cases final focus speaker. To reiterate, we have negated the notion that public colleges and universities should have COVID-19 vaccine mandates on the grounds that a mandate would be unnecessary and unethical. The majority of college-aged young adults are already vaccinated, not to mention that college-aged young adults are unlikely to transmit COVID-19. Mandates are not the only way of fostering public health. We have viable alternatives that can be self-enforced. Not only that, but a mandate would be unethical. There is a lack of access equity when it comes to the vaccine. Mandating a vaccine is a violation of bodily autonomy and the disruption of a right to a citizen's right to pursue an education. We may be a collective, but we are also individuals, and it is not right to ignore individual rights for the sake of a collective. We, the negatives, have won this debate as our opponent conceded our points about a lack of vaccine equity, the viability of alternative protective measures, the point we made about boosters, issues of wood distribution and inconsistencies, and the survival rate of young people. Our opponents also invoked improper statistics to support their contentions, as they were blanket statements for the larger population, not specific to college populations, and are therefore irrelevant. Not only that, but the point they made about college students returning home was only introduced in summary and therefore should not be counted. Thank you.
last speech in our debate. Give it up for our debaters. We've got a few minutes of time left. I'm going to ask the audience if they have comments, questions, or things they would like to direct at our participants.
I was wondering if y'all could like elaborate more on the drunk driving thing. Because I noticed y'all didn't really get to defend your point as much as you
Where I
wanted.
was going with that is an unvaccinated person can be considered a drunk driver because say I'm unvaccinated and I have COVID, I give it to her, she dies. Say I'm driving a car drunk, I crash into her, she dies. I was trying to establish a connection there. Yeah, you get what I'm
It was along the lines of you are responsible for how you affect people around you by your decisions, whether that be drinking and then driving, or not getting a vaccine and then walking into an 800-person strong classroom.
That's a great question. Interesting argument. Any other comments from our audience members, participants? This is a topic that hits home. It's you! Surprise!
Do you have any comments for us?
That's not about to ask.
Terry, did you want to?
Oh, that's what I was going to ask. What were your comments?
I thought it was a great debate, didn't y'all?
Yeah.
Yeah, really wonderful. Some interesting arguments I had not thought of before, such as this drunk driver thing, as well as the spread kind of thing. Very, very interesting.
I wish we just had more time.
Yes.
If we had like, I'm gonna be conservative, if we had double the time in each segment, I feel like this debate would have been much more, how do I say it? Much more lively?
Like engaging.
Absolutely,
yeah.
yes.
I feel like we both had a lot more that we just didn't get to
Yes.
actually touch because we didn't have the time to do it.
Yes.
I know, like, we didn't like have a part of our initial case then, and then I was like, oh, I don't actually know if we made that point. I don't know if I should say this.
Yeah, we didn't even really have time to address a lot of the stuff you said that we couldn't get to in your summary speech.
Very true.
But
Very true.
would you like give us an indicator of how you would vote in this scenario?
This is an interesting debate. Honestly, I would have to take a minute to think through this one, and here's the reason why. In debate, we typically divide these things in half, front half and back half. First four speeches being the front half, last four speeches being the back half. I thought that the affirmative was more evidenced and did a stronger job of presenting arguments in the front half. However, I thought the negative did a great job of catch-up in the back half of the debate. So I'd have to think through the arguments. My guess is that probably I would say there's not a reason not to invoke a mandate. And so I would think, even though masks and other things work, the affirmative has made an argument about the ethics of doing vaccines. And I'd have to sort out the question of this bodily autonomy versus willingly infecting other people, an interesting strategy to take on that.
Government
What
compelling
about-
interest is also an idea.
What about like the point about boosters, about how boosters basically prove that vaccines are not fully effective for
Yep.
long periods of time?
Yep.
And then there's how would you actually enforce that? If someone got I got my vaccine over a year ago.
Yep.
And then
So,
I
yeah.
have my booster, but.
Absolutely, it's a great point, it's a great point. And as a judge, as I'm thinking about that argument, I see you primarily using that argument to undermine the effectiveness of vaccines. So they may not be as effective. But what I think you could have done that would have helped your side more is use that to boost, see what I'm doing there, to boost your argument on bodily integrity. What I think would have been a stronger tactic or strategy there would be to say, well, every 6 months someone has to get another shot. This is not like a one instance drunk driving thing. This is every 6 months you have to do this.
Yeah, but I don't know. To me, the drunk driving thing is a little bit out of nowhere because it's sort of like a reckless endeavor for the sake of, driving home drunk, But whereas actually getting a vaccine is a whole other thing.
Yep.
And putting that in your body and getting that health, and so I kind of feel like that's not really.
Absolutely agreed. Do you think you had a speaker that pointed it out like you're saying it there? The analogy is not really apt. This is something that goes in your body and it's not the same as acting towards other people.
Yeah, and it was like, I think it was the point that I made about when COVID first started, they were having trouble having people even wear masks. So if they can't even get people to wear masks, why would they try to force them getting a vaccine instead of telling them why they should get a vaccine, or maybe explain them, like giving them more resources as to why they should do it instead of just like shoving it down their throat.
In the first speech, you mean?
I'm sorry?
In the first speech?
Yes.
Right? Okay, I understand.
Yeah, then we ended up actually negating that because all these news sources and the government has been putting out initiatives about the COVID-19 vaccine and masks and all of that, and it's been doing some good. So that point kind of just went, I think, neutral kind of at the end of the day.
I mean, I saw in the news that study, or not study, but like how California, it's high in COVID cases
Yep.
versus Florida that hasn't mandated anything, is
Yep.
really low.
Yeah, good point. Really good point.
Florida also has a lot less population than California by
But it also
several
talked
orders of
about like,
magnitude.
I mean, Texas also is lower than California
Per capita?
for COVID cases.
Per capita, like, do you mean overall numbers or do you mean per thousand people?
Well,
or
also
2,000 people?
Texas is a lot more spread out than California is as well. California, most of their population is concentrated in 5, maybe 6 cities. Texas is spread out a
That
lot
makes a very
more.
good point, Deb. These things are evolving, they're changing over time. I would say this definitely affects you. The university does not have a vaccine mandate. We are unlikely to have a vaccine mandate here, and yet this discussion will not go away. There was reports in the news yesterday of a new surge in America, and our numbers in the last week have topped Europe. Yay, we're number one. Yay.
You can say.
Thanks, everybody. Great job.
Yeah, that's about the boosters. I remember reading something about the boosters being necessary to help quell, not like community, but
We were here for extra credit. We have a sign-up sheet.
virus. I thought from what I read, the boosters were more along the lines of keeping deviant versions of the virus from popping up. Like, notice how we've only had like one notable variant in Delta. Vaccines are a big part of that
This up and
because
take it back over
I don't know if you know this,
32.
but
Joseph is there.